I realize there are some of you out there who don't really know what I do, other than preach here occasionally and wrangle my 3 beloved sons on a Sunday morning. You likely know that I am an ordained minister in the Church of the Brethren, but outside of preaching here and in some other congregations on occasion, I don't do much pastoring in the congregational context anymore. I coordinate certificate-level ministry training programs for the Brethren Academy, which is an educational partnership of the Church of the Brethren and Bethany Seminary. A large portion of my job is coordinating classes, many of them online, and lining up instructors and faculty, helping translate student transcripts to them, and so on and so forth. Like I said, most of our classes are online, but sometimes we have a weekend intensive at various locations around the country. A few weeks ago, I had the honor and privilege of joining the Miami Haitian Church of the Brethren to host a class. Yes, I got to travel to Miami, Florida at the end of February. It was quite a joy. Conspiring with a dear friend of mine, Amy Gall-Ritchie, who was a former pastor in this district and whose brother is actually worshiping with us this morning, we decided to turn this work trip into a road trip, with her tagging along. So we drove 2 days to South Florida, spent 3 nights in Miami, and drove 2 days back. The allure of this, honestly, was the 4 days in the car with each other, connecting, laughing, singing, pondering, eating Twizzlers and drinking soda, and of course, since we were heading south, stopping at all the Waffle Houses we could. We planned an uneventful, though meaningful trip, and for the most part, it was. However, the gods of the road trip never like to let things go by too easily. On our way back, as the sun set in southern Georgia, we began driving into a band of severe weather that earlier that day, and unbeknownst to us, had caused a rash of tornado outbreaks in Alabama that killed over 20 people. We were driving through that storm system, and as we noticed lightning illuminating the darkening sky ahead of us, we decided to follow the weather on our phones, on our various weather apps. Amy was driving into the storm as the wind and rain picked up, and I stayed calm and chatted as I kept my eye on the radar, somewhat surprising myself, because I hate even the thought of tornadoes. I loathe them. I reassured myself that if there was real danger, our smartphones would alert us. And sure enough, we were jolted out of our conversation with the jarring blare from our phones, telling us a tornado was in the area and to take shelter. And while I say I loathe the idea of being in a tornado warning, being in a tornado warning in the dark is among my biggest fears. But I kept it together. Forgetting about stop signs and actual roads, we made some shortcuts across some grassy medians. Amy adeptly pulled us into one of the inhabited structures at the nearest exit, the only one, a run-down, junky-looking econo lodge. With rain pummeling and wind whipping, we parked and ran inside. Amy will tell you I made a humorous entrance as I pushed open the door and dramatically asked, "Can we take shelter here?" With nothing between her and us but an old pool table, the woman behind the desk said, with a country drawl and a warm smile, "Oh, honey, of course you can." We spent about an hour there hanging out with the desk lady and a young couple from college who was also taking shelter from the storm. Now, being the Midwestern girl I am, I scanned the place like a detective scanning for clues and said, "If the tornado comes, it will sound like a freight engine, and we'll go in there," pointing to an interior room without windows, "and we'll pull that table in and get under it." Luckily, we didn't have to do that. Most of the time was spent laughing and watching the news on the TV. All of us seeking shelter, gathering in the wing of the one-star Econo Lodge mother hen. And then we scattered back into the night, a bit calmer, a bit more grateful for the kindness of strangers. When Jesus stood before the Pharisees, he knew the storm was coming. He knew what was going to whip him around, overcome him, and eventually kill him. But he knew the storm was not just for him. He knew that the purpose of being a prophet is to inhabit that singularly contradictory character trait that holds together the call to warn and the desire to comfort. We forget that sometimes, that prophets are called to comfort. We think of wild-eyed, hairy men like the locust-eating John the Baptist, or end-time fear-mongers on the street near us. But that's not the whole of it. As Jesus says, the ultimate desire is to gather us together, like under the wing of a mother hen. Gather us into the saving power of the Creator. Gather us into the sustaining power of the community. Gather us into the sanctifying power of a life lived beyond our own desire for power and control. When our phones go off telling us to take shelter, we take shelter. When the test results come back that said we should watch the cholesterol, we watch the cholesterol. When the fire alarm goes off, we get out of the house, or at least we should, because if we don't, we won't be the only ones living with the consequences. When the ice caps start melting, we listen. When 1 in 8 children are diagnosed with some sort of anxiety disorder, we are called to attention. When swastikas start showing up in dizzyingly increasing amounts on public spaces, we need to wake up and act. The storm is not only coming, my friends, the storm is here. It has arrived. The alarms are going off all around us, and the prophets, while looking different than we might think, are speaking clearly. But are we paying attention? When we listen and respond to the call to shelter of the prophet, we will, yes, find life and protection. But while under the mother's wing, we receive the call to transformation of our spirits and a revolution against the powers of injustice, political, economic, and social. So right here, at this point, this was my sermon up to Thursday night. I had about 250 more words to hit home that the prophet's notion of shelter is an integrated life, a place of safety and action. So let me just repeat that. The prophet's notion of shelter is an integrated life of safety and action. But I don't have any more to say about that, because that was my sermon on Thursday night. And then Friday morning comes, and nearly 50 people are dead in 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. Dead in places of worship, a scene so real for us here in the United States. Nearly 50 dead in places of shelter, dead in places of safety, and likely in places of faithful action. And Friday morning, I wondered if any of this makes any sense anymore. If there is a mother hen strong enough to withstand this storm. Is there? So Friday morning and Saturday morning and even this morning, I was stuck, wondering, seriously, do these words mean anything to us anymore? Is there any place to find safety? I don't have an answer for you. I don't have the Jesus-y spin to put on it to make it easier. The prophets are speaking and dying. They are speaking and dying all around us. So maybe instead of trying to find the hopeful message on this second Sunday of Lent, the hopeful message we always hope we can get out of a sermon, maybe today we let the prophet's words simply convict us, not trying to find the meaning in them, but place ourselves in the shoes of the people who heard it for the first time, who heard his words in the seriousness and the sadness he spoke them, not really wondering what to make of them, but just sitting with the way the words touch our deepest pain and fear. Jesus didn't stick around to interpret his words for them. He said them, he convicted them, he loved them, and he left them. So we today will sit and simply hear these words. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to Jesus, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." Jesus said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me. Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed away from Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you. And I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" I cannot think of a better word at this time to embody the shelter of our God than words attributed to the saint we remember today. St. Patrick's breastplate is a prayer that I feel calls on the powers of the cosmic Christ to encircle us and the world with protective powers. So I invite you to respond. I invite you to stand if you are comfortable. And if you are comfortable, hold a hand as you're standing and place an arm around one next to you, or maybe even a group of you, as we make physical shelter for each other. Please stand with me. And as we pray, imagine this prayer of sheltering, love going out to all people, all faiths, all beings. Let us join together in embodiment of shelter. I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of sun, radiance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of the sea, stability of earth, firmness of rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's eye to look before me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me from all who shall wish me ill afar and anear, alone and in a multitude, against every cruel, merciless power that may oppose my body and soul. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me and above me, Christ on my right and my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ to shield me, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me. I arise today. Amen.